Like they say, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. All is fair in love and war. What goes around comes around, all the stuff. It's so funny watching the Democrats apply a completely different set of rules and principles to a thing that is commonly done in politics, but the big bad Orange Monster's doing it, so it's a lot different now. I'm going to react to a video where they're talking about Texas and the redistricting. And what I like is there's some nuanced conversations in here and an explanation by Joey. So it will educate you a little bit about the term gerrymandering and hopefully give you a more balanced view of whether this is right or wrong and if Trump is actually just changing the rules.
Well, the Democratic Party is short on policy, but boy, oh boy, they are full of stunts. A whole posse of Texas Democrats skipping town on a private plane, fleeing the Lone Star State to dodge a vote that would have advanced the GOP's redistricting plans. Republicans are looking to scoop as many as 5 new House seats next year, and the Dems' big plan to stop it, well, they've tried it before. They want to go hide out in friendly blue state territory, places like Illinois and New York, where the governors are rolling out the welcome mat.
We're not here to play political games.
Texas governor would bend a knee.
When he said that, I'm not sure if you heard he said the Texas governor would bend a knee. I'm actually happy. I think it gives me a good feeling that people didn't jump on that statement, considering that Greg Abbott is in a wheelchair. So for this man to say bend a knee, people who have ill intent and people who are making bad faith arguments could have definitely jumped on that.
To Donald Trump, because he's afraid to lose an election.
I think we all know Donald Trump is a cheater, a cult leader and would-be dictator of the United States, tells Texas.
So he used all the things that the focus groups told him to say: would-be dictator, cult leader, all the stuff that hasn't worked for the last 10 years. They keep pulling out the same things out of their vernacular, their playbook of things to say about Trump that are just now tired and no one's really hearing it.
Texas to midstream change the game when they know that they're going to lose in 2026. All bets are off.
This is a war. We are at war. And that's why the gloves are off.
There is no felony in the Texas Penal Code for what he says. So respectfully, he's making up some shit.
Well, some folks are pointing out the irony of the lawmakers fleeing to Illinois, which is heavily gerrymandered, if you check out those districts there. And Texas Democrat Jasmine Crockett is at risk of losing her seat in the redistricting, and perhaps that explains why she's been extra salty towards President Trump.
It's interesting to hear her talk now. So you see, she definitely code switches. One thing I will give her credit for that. Jasmine Crockett is the queen of code switching. When she's in front of certain audiences, she's more polished, more reserved, a bit more articulate. Still comes off with some of the unnecessary language, but when I think she's looking for that viral moment, when she's on Colbert or she's on one of these other shows, she does the sassy black girl thing. But here, I'm gonna say she was all right here.
Listen, Donald Trump is a piece of shit. Okay, we know that. Yes, he is. He is. He is.
Well, not there. I don't mean that. I mean in the other clip.
But in a functioning democracy, he still would not be able to get away with this.
And breaking just moments ago, Texas Governor Greg Abbott has ordered the arrest of the runaway Democrats, saying, quote, there are consequences for dereliction of duty. Earlier, Abbott outlined what potential charges they could face.
Very simply, it would be bribery if any lawmaker took money to perform or to refuse to perform an act in the legislature. And the reports are these legislators have been both, they sought money and they offered money to skip the vote, to leave the legislature, to take a legislative act. That would be bribery. There's one way to cure that. And that is, if they get back to the state of Texas and make quorum today.
I tell you what, they should not mess with Greg Abbott, because if you think about it, he is one of the reasons why the Republicans did so well in the last election, because he was one of the first people to start busing the migrants to different parts of the country. Remember when they sent them to Martha's Vineyard, and all of these, liberals or people consider themselves liberal, they weren't having it. Like, these people hit Martha's Vineyard and they were out like within 2-3 days. So it just goes to show you that it's great when when the immigrants are coming, or the migrants are coming to Texas, because they feel like, oh, it's fine, they can absorb it. But Greg Abbott was one of the first governors to start busing them other places, and this is what hit New York, and this was the one of the things that made New York mayor start to say, well, actually, I get it. And I think that was part of the downfall of him, is because he started to challenge the Biden administration. So this man should get credit for what he did and his 4D chess. You may disagree with him and busing people to other states, but what it did is it made people realize that it's not just about being kind to people. When you have a state and have limited resources, you have to put your citizens first. And you can absorb a little bit of, people that are in need, etc. But at some point, the burden has to be shared. So Eric Adams felt that brunt when these people were then bused to New York.
Apparently that's not going to happen. Jesse, do you remember in December of 2021, the TikTok Texans left, they fled, they went to Washington, D.C. It was like one of the great political comedies of all time, and now they're trying it again.
Yeah, so Jesse Jr. didn't want to go to camp the other day because I was driving him, and he wanted mommy to drive. And
she's a better driver.
No, definitely not. And then so he finds out I'm driving, and he starts crying and runs upstairs and hides in my room. And I get to him and I say, what's the problem? Why don't you want Dad to take you? And he says, well, mommy, when she takes me to camp, she stops at Dunkin' Donuts for munchkins.
Not a fan of Jesse Walters, because he always comes across as a frat boy, but he actually does do a solid analogy here about his son.
Now I get why Mom drives. So I said, we'll stop for a treat. And then I drove him, and he forgot about the treat. This is the same kind of infantile behavior you're seeing. They're crying, they're running, and they're throwing a tantrum until they get what they want. This also has happened on the Republican side, too. In 1988, the Democrats in the Senate had a campaign finance bill, and the Republicans couldn't filibuster it, so the Republican senators disappeared. And what did Robert Byrd do, who was a member of the Klan, Jessica? He ordered the sergeant at arms to gather up a bunch of Capitol Police officers and hunt down and arrest Republican senators. And they find Bob Packwood holed up in his office, and he tried to obstruct the door. So they bust down the door, they handcuff him, and they drag him feet first back onto the Senate floor.
So he's telling a story about the Republicans doing the exact same thing. And that's one of the points of my video. If you look at this as something that only Trump has ever done, and he's just doing something that is unprecedented, this clip is going to be good for you, because you'll see that this is a done thing in politics. We have to remember, politicians want to hang on to power. And they'll do various things within the law, and sometimes stretch the law, and sometimes do things that we don't even know about, to ensure that they hold on to the power. So in England, in London, they're looking at trying to lower the voting age, and this is seen as something that is progressive. So a lot of people on the left are supporting this, and I think in America it's the same thing. The Democrats were like, oh, we should allow younger people to vote. Now there's good arguments on both sides. So you could argue that, well, why should someone be able to go to war but not be able to vote? Or you could argue that, well, at 16, actually, how mature is someone? Vivek came up with what I thought was a good solution during his campaign. It fell flat on its face, but I think there's different maturity levels at 16, 18, 20. I think at 25, everybody should be able to do it. I think before that, maybe you should earn the right through demonstrating that you at least understand some civics. So there should potentially be an exam. Vivek had proposed that the same exam that people take to become US citizens, in order to vote before a certain age, you should have to take that exam. And I think that makes sense, because otherwise, if you don't earn certain rights, you take them for granted, which is why a lot of people just don't vote. Which I think is sad in democratic countries where people have sacrificed life and limb to give people the right to vote. You often have people that just sit it out, but then complain about the outcome.
This has happened a lot recently, though, with the Democrats. From Texas to Indiana to Wisconsin, they're running away from their jobs. The American people don't know the word gerrymander. You go out to the street, you ask them what gerrymander is, they don't know and they don't care. They have other things they're dealing with. They know what it looks like when you don't go to work, and all the headlines right now are Democrats run away from their jobs. People want politicians to show up, and they're not showing up. They say the Republicans are pulling a power grab. What do you think bringing 20 million migrants into the country was? They're saying this is an abuse of power. Put the map back up of Illinois. That looked like an earthworm on LSD connecting blue cities.
Jesse Jr. did it.
Exactly. So they're saying that we're going to steal the midterms, the Republicans. Well, the last time Trump was president, they stole the midterms by hovering the Russia hoax over his head, which cost him the House. Now, Obama told Democrats a couple weeks ago to get tough. And what did they do? They ran away. Do men run away? Is this how you get men back? Did the men at the Alamo in Texas run away?
No, but they all died.
They didn't. And that might happen. And that might happen in the redistricting, but they didn't hop on a private jet.
Joe, if you look at that map of Illinois, I pointed out on America's Newsroom today that Republicans won in about 47%.
So that map of Illinois, they're showing how the different districts are carved out. And when you look at that, some of them are odd. So this gerrymandering concept or redistricting is commonly done. It's done for political advantage. Everybody knows that. But I think in this instance, because the Democrats in Texas are really worried about what's going on, specifically Jasmine, because Jasmine could lose her seat, which for some people would be great news. For me, actually, she gives me some good content. So it would be good to have her around. But the people of Texas deserve representatives that are there to make their lives better, people that are actually in the state, doing the work in the state. Texas is a great state. I lived there for a while. It's a great state, great people. And Texans are hardcore. Like, Texans kind of view themselves as a country unto themselves. So, when you look at the Illinois map, you see that this is not uncommon. The Democrats have done these districts to give themselves a political advantage, as Dana Perino is going to talk about.
Of the popular vote in 2024, but they only hold 17% of the seats. Now, that Illinois chose to do that. That's what living in Illinois is like. I don't know if this is the best place to flee to.
So a lot of these places, when they gerrymander, it's almost they're complicit with both parties. Hey, give me a more red district, I'll give you a more blue district. We see that a lot. North Carolina went through it in the courts, I think, a couple of years ago. It's nothing new. I'm kind of with Jesse, though, when you talk about the amount of illegal immigrants that came into the country, I was like, well, they can't vote. Well, they do get counted in the census. And when they get counted in the census, that decides where these districts come up at and which states get them.
That's such a powerful point. And Elon Musk had brought that up in one of the debates that he had. Yes, the people that come into the country illegally cannot vote, but they are included in the census, and the census helps determine the proportion of, I think, senators that a particular state gets, or congresspeople. I could be wrong, but it does have an impact on the representation of that state. So therefore, bringing in people that, although they cannot vote, it does impact the power that that party can have. And, if you look at what happened over the previous administration, millions of people were coming in, and that's changed the shape of America.
California has 1.8 million illegal immigrants. That's 2+ congressional seats. New York has more than 600,000. That's almost a full congressional seat. Now, those two states actually lost seats because everybody else is fleeing. But the idea that Republicans are cheating because they're doing what both parties have done since the inception of this country, yet they ignore that and they call that the great replacement theory, like it's racist. No, it's not racist. It's matter of fact. It's really difficult to see like Senator Padilla sit there and cry foul.
One of the things, Jessica, that is kind of ironic about this is that you have 31 million Texans, I believe. Hello, are you calling me? And they've had like I think a net migration of 131,000 people over a short period of time. So there's this population growth in Texas, but Illinois is one of the places that is losing population because of the way that it's governed. So I found that a little bit curious. I'm sure you have a lot to say about this. I would just like to point out that I don't want Jasmine Crockett to lose her seat.
I know,
I really,
it brings you guys infinite
I
joy.
enjoy her, and I think she's a real, like, one of life's great characters.
Well, hopefully she won't, but odds are that that is what's going to happen once everyone does eventually have to come home, whether that is tomorrow or it's in December, and they can hide out that long. And this isn't about populations coming in and out of blue states. It's about the fact that J.B. Pritzker can afford to do this. And when they went to D.C. a few years ago, they ran out of money. J.B. Pritzker's never running out of money, and he's got a bunch of Hyatt hotels, and they can each have a suite, and they can hang out there for as long as they need to. But the idea that people are watching this happen, or at least people who vote like I do or have similar values, to me, are seeing this just as people running away from their job is ludicrous. What they are seeing is
See, this is a point that I made in another video. There's a baked in part of the population that regardless of what their party does will always vote for their party. They'll see anything that their party does as a ways to an end. So, you know, in my view, them running away or them leaving the state is a dereliction of duty. But if you are supporting what they're trying to accomplish, which is preventing the redistricting, then you're going to be like, yeah, it's fine. But, you know, like, could you do that at your job? Could you just say, well, I'm going to run away because I don't want this decision to go against my will? You couldn't do that. And I think, like Obama said, elections have consequences. So when the Democrats were in party, they did everything that they could do to ensure that they had a good, strong future of people that would continue to vote for them. And the Republicans are doing the exact same thing. This is what politics are about. But I just think leaving, and they did it before, I think leaving is just not the way forward. But they are preparing their excuse for if, not when, but if the Republicans pick up some seats in the midterm, which statistically they shouldn't, but a lot of the data is pointing in the direction that this could be an outlier as far as what happens in the midterm. And I think the midterm is the best way of gauging how people feel about this current administration. So I think if they pick up seats, or even if they hold on to the seats that they have, that would be overwhelmingly in support of the things that are happening now. Now, it's a long time until the midterms, relatively speaking, and a lot can happen. But if Republicans buck the trend of the party in power losing seats, that will say a lot. And I think that will almost make it a shoo-in for J.D. Vance or whoever the Republican nominee is to do to be the next president. But if a lot of people vote and they lose seats and they lose ground, the Republicans, then that would mean that probably the American population is not feeling what's happening. So a lot has happened in the first 6 months of this administration. I think if the tariffs prove to be effective and they don't make inflation go up, if at some point they do lower the base rate, if all of those things happen, probably by the time that the midterm comes around, all of the negative things or the things that people might have viewed negative won't be as important because they'll have money in their pockets and people vote based on the economy. I think a lot of the social issues will be resolved by then. I'm pretty confident that the far left will continue to push things that aren't popular across the country, because that's kind of their shtick. But let's just see what happens in the midterms.
Fact that Donald Trump called up Greg Abbott, and redistricting is supposed to happen once every 10 years. That's when the census happens. He's saying, I want a mid-cycle redistrict because I only have a three-seat majority, and I need a bigger cushion. So get me 5 more seats. So Greg Abbott calls a special session, not about the flooding, not about what happened in Camp Mystic, but so that he can steal seats from Democrats, so that Jazzy won't be able to have her seat any longer. It's important to remind people that in 2021, there was a bill, the For the People Act, H.R. 1, and it would have banned all gerrymandering, and every single Democrat voted for it, and every single Republican voted against it. Republicans want it this way. They want to use this to their advantage, and of course, there are some states, if you can do it, why wouldn't you get as many seats as possible? But the way in which Abbott is going about this has made people, even like Eric Holder, who runs an organization that is fundamentally against this, change his tune, because the California proposal, and Newsom has been out front on this as well, only has this happen for a few years. So it will go back to normal cadence, and the independent commissions will come back into play. But if you don't fight fire with fire, what are we supposed to do? In a midterm, you're supposed to pick up seats. So we're supposed to just sit there and take it like this? That's why Hochul says that we are at war. And it looks that way to me, and I'm someone who doesn't usually argue for this kind of behavior. What is unfair is in Texas, 45% of the vote goes to Democrats. They would only get 21% of the seats.
Is that also unfair in Illinois?
Yeah, I said they took advantage of it.
I mean, and that's the thing. And so let me ask the California expert here, if this is a gerrymandered nuclear arms race, if California decides to do the same thing, could this backfire on Republicans?
Well, I think the application matters. So there were some critics, for example, that said, look, this map could have been a lot uglier. So I think there's a spectrum indeed of what the impact is. So the answer to your question is, in true attorney form, is it depends. And I think respectfully, I don't think this is fighting fire with fire. I see this as stunts masquerading as statesmanship. Legislators fleeing their constitutional duty to a blue state, somehow this friendly refuge for them, and totally, absconding their legislative duty. It just shows that they prefer theater to governance. Like, they can't have that substantive discussion, and instead they just have to tick-tock away all day long. And the irony, earlier today, Ann Johnson, a Texas Democrat, was being interviewed, and she said, this is an extraordinary tactic.
See, this is the thing. The whole concept of them trying to do this TikTok thing, I don't think any of the tactics that they've tried on social media that have clearly come from consultants has worked. It's all cringe. It's all just so performative. And most of the people probably wouldn't even know how to use TikTok. So it's probably one of their aides helping them get up and running. I think they just need to be authentic. As voters, all of us want to know that, we have people that are representing us and have our best interest in mind. They're not trying to do things to get to the next stage in their career. They're actually trying to make our lives better. And these TikTok stunts and all of this stuff run into these states. I think Pritzker and the governor of New York, I forget her name, they are going to pay politically for this, because I think it will backfire if they, and I know Pritzker is almost certainly going to be running for president. I think things like this are going to become really good campaign ads for the Republicans, because if the Democrats fall flat on this, it will be a loss, and he will be someone that actually supported it, and it just won't be good for him. So I think these governors that are allowing the Texas senators or the Texas Congress people to head out there and just like chill in hotels, I don't think it's a good look. I don't think it's going to give them the political points that they think that they're going to get.
This is the final straw that we only employ when there's a complete threat to democracy. The threat to democracy is all of the legislators leaving the building. And then when pointed out by the host, well, you did do this in 2021, so it seems like it sort of happens a lot. She acknowledged, yes, that happened and that it didn't work at that time. So this is failure upon failure. And I note that the narrative being pushed always goes back to this, because when confronted with the fact that you've done this before, you pulled the stunt, it didn't work, what did she do? She drew a football analogy that didn't make sense. And then she said, well, at the end of the day, we need Texans to know, does their governor serve Trump or does he serve Texans? And so it's
And that's what they've done. If you look at the wording throughout this whole thing, they've tried to make it look like the Greg Abbott is being subservient to Trump. So Trump called Greg and said that I need more votes and whatever. It's all about vilifying Trump, and it's such a bad play because it hasn't worked till this point. That's why he's president again. And also, what happens when Trump is no longer in office? He's not going to be running again. He's old, and he has better things to do. He has grandkids and potentially great grandkids from now. I think his goal is to, in his eyes, be the best president ever. I think that's one of his personal goals. And I think that benefits America because he is, in his eyes and in his view, trying to do the best thing for Americans. I think he has his hardcore Trump fans. He has his hardcore Trump, detractors. I think he's trying to win the hearts and minds of those people that are persuadable. Some people aren't. And by doing that, even Harry Enton, the CNN data guy, is saying that Trump has been the most consequential president of our lifetimes. And that's, in his first 6 months plus his previous term. If he's able to accomplish a lot of the things that he's trying to do, I think it will be almost indisputable that he's been one of the greatest presidents of our lifetime, based on what he's able to accomplish, based on delivering on the promises that he made and reshaping the whole political system. He was like an earthquake. He came in, Republicans didn't want him. Democrats didn't understand him or like him, but he's reshaped the whole political landscape. Some people, some journalists, some politicians have come to prominence just by being vocal about Trump. I think a lot of the YouTube channels you watch, me included, a lot of content has come about, and people are more interested in politics because of Trump.
Always going to come back to this: Trump is bad and he's at the root at all evil. When they're also saying, well, in these new districts, the conservative Hispanics are outweighing the Democratic Hispanics and the white voters. Well, that's exactly what happened in 2024. So for me, this is the application of reality then, rather than the distortion that the Democrats always hope for.
But Trump did ask for it explicitly. He wants those 5 extra seats. Don't you think it should just be every 10 years as it has been?
Well, we'll see when the Voter Rights Act is called into question at first SCOTUS, and I'm pretty sure they'll rule in this favor.
And real quick, Texas, their legislature only meets every 2 years. So most of what they do is under special session. It isn't like this is some completely out of the blue kind of thing. And what exactly do you want them? What exactly do you want them to do in response to the floods? What would you like for them to call a special? Because you brought that in, like you're comparing the two things.
Well, go over the alarm system, give them the billions of dollars.
That is part of the thing today.
Well, it's secondary.
I am for more competitive districts. When Bill Hemmer's at the board on election night, it would be great for him to have more than a handful of congressional seats for him to look at and say, these are the 18, more than 18 that we need to watch. I think 1 year it was only 34.
I will say I love Dana Perino. She is so measured. I think a lot of what I do is kind of shaped around her style of giving credit where credit is due. I think Joey just made a fantastic point. And this is what needs to happen more, especially with Jessica. Sometimes you need to tie her down on a fact. And then you can bring back things that she said previously. Because although she sits at that table, and I think the relationships that they have are great, she's always going to be anti-Trump. And when Juan was on there, it was the same thing. And I mean, that's why they're there. It's to have someone with the opposing view. But I think with Jessica, it's hard to watch her and the mental gymnastics she has to do in order to defend her position. So thanks for watching. That's just a little bit of a conversation about what's going on in Texas. Texas is a great state. I may be wrong about stuff. As I always say, I'm just a guy with a Wi-Fi connection and a camera. I'm just adding my 2 cents, putting in my thoughts, and hopefully giving, some nuance to the conversation in a way that's not mean-spirited. It's a small channel, so I appreciate you watching. And if you're watching, please subscribe. It would mean a lot to me. I do my very best to respond to comments, even the mean ones. So make sure you like, make sure you subscribe, and make sure you share this with someone who might be really